morning, everybody, and welcome to this leadership episode of 30 Minutes to President's Club. My name is Armand Farouk, and I'm here with my co-host, Nick Cegelski. And today, it's a round two with one of the best leadership guests we've ever had. It is the one and only John Sherer. He's been at HubSpot, he was a VP of sales over at Lattice, and now he's the COO over at Growth Assistant. Nick, why should people listen?
John taught me some really good stuff on this one related to hiring. Everything from what you should be looking for when you are screening resumes and false positives that don't really matter as much. He talks about the first question you should be asking on every interview. And then he talks about when to shift from your screening them to selling them on why they should come to your company.
And 3, 2, 1, let's roll. The man with the red hat is back. John, welcome back to the show. We start every leadership show with your top 3 actionable takeaways. Let's get your 3.
All right. Number 1, tier 1, tier 2 customer strategy. We all have better customers and worse customers. Some of us call it ICP or non-ICP, but everyone has a tier 1, tier 2 customer strategy. Good example of this is HubSpot. When we were building the CRM there, we knew very clearly that some customers had Gmail, some customers didn't. The customers with Gmail retained way better than those. And so in marketing meetings, we only talked about Gmail leads, and in sales comp, we paid reps 3 times more for those tier 1 Gmail customers. This works in every business I've ever been a part of. I'm fully committed to the tier 1, tier 2 strategy.
Boom. What's number 2?
Number 2, listen to your body. If it's not an F yes, it's an F no. This is about hiring. Anytime I've hired somebody and I've had like a feeling in my chest or a feeling in my stomach, or I'm like, I don't know. And then you're justifying it in your head. You're like, yeah, but great background. Oh, this other person really liked him. I'm like 0 for 6 every single time. It hasn't worked out. So, listen to your body. Trust those feelings. Hasn't ever been wrong for me.
I love how you led with listen to your body. By the way, this is about hiring. What's number 3?
This is one I really like. Letting your managers make a mistake on their first hire. So you hire a new manager and they're about to make their first AE hire, and you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know. I don't feel great about this, but they're so bullish. What do? If you have 4 or 5 plus hires that quarter, I'd like to let them make the hire. And hey, maybe they're right, you're wrong, but either way, like, you're both going to learn something. If you only have 1 or 2 hires that quarter, maybe 1 or 2 hires for the rest of the year, I'm going to step in, right? And I'm going to take full ownership here and say, no, like, I need that revenue. This hire can't fail. There's too much risk in ramp.
All right, John. So I want to start all the way at the beginning of the hiring process. I've got a buddy right now who's hiring for some AEs. He's hiring 4 or 5 in this quarter. And he's doing what you just described, which is he's starting to screen resumes. Talk to me about what advice you would give this person when they're looking at the hundreds of resumes that are coming in their way. What should they be looking out for?
1, I'd try to have somebody else on their team screen those hundreds of resumes. That's a really tough way to spend your time as an expensive employee. I think it's company dependent. So let's use Lattice, HR tech as an example. Things that got me really excited about a candidate when there was a high volume of inbound requests. 1, they worked at a tier 2 competitor. That means they already know the buyer. They already know some of the key language. And they're used to having a lower quality product in the space competing against us and doing well, because you're only going to hire reps that are doing well, right? I think I'm going to be able to bring that person in. And with our brand power, we're going to crush. So that's a pretty sure thing when we were at Lattice. Other things that get me really excited, I love people who did an early career, like big company rotational program, GE corporate finance, Johnson & Johnson corporate finance, McKinsey. Those folks know how to talk business. And in sales, at the end of the day, like, it really is consulting. And so if you can't talk business with the person you're working with, you're going to struggle. Those folks tend to come ready to talk business. And they grew up on those 60-hour plus work weeks, which creates a high floor with any employee. They're going to work super freaking hard. And so I think like that floor makes a big difference when you're making a bunch of hires. Those are 2 things that really stand out to me.
And then how about false positives? What are things that people typically think, oh, this is a great sign, that in your experience are like, that isn't actually an indicator that they're going to be successful with us?
Oh, big, really successful companies, especially ones that are like borderline monopolies in an industry, right? Like, I mean, there's a bunch of them out there, but that's an example to me where it's like when you have a monopoly over something and you're coming into a hyper competitive space, I don't know if that's a background that's going to lead to a really high volume of success. I think at the end of the day, right, like, success at these businesses, like, the most important thing is product market fit. if there's a ton of product market fit and there are a ton of inbound leads, these jobs aren't that hard. And like, then eventually the leads slow down based on your growth, and you have to outbound and the space heats up and it gets competitive and then it gets tough. But like, if you're hiring somebody from one of those environments, they might not have actually had to hone their sales skills, but the logo looks great. You get to go to your boss and say, hey, look, I hired this person from this super sexy company. I think there's a lot of risk there, and I tend to avoid it.
Nick, you were on an interview the other day with Jen Allen, and one of the things that came up was that big company AEs are really, really good at following process. So for example, if you're an AE at Oracle or Salesforce, awesome companies, you might be really good at quarterbacking deals and following sales process and pulling in your sales engineers, but they're not as good at building process, which is oftentimes really important in the early stages or even in the growth stages of a company when you're spinning up new teams or you're carving out territories for certain new parts of the ICP. So John, I'm curious for you, when you were at Lattice, you were there relatively early. How important to you was it that someone had experience in the early stage of company when you were in the early stages of Lattice?
Yeah, let's talk about that world building process. I think there's almost a misnomer in there, which is like, to build process, you have to invent process. To invent process, you have to try things, stop doing what doesn't work, and do what works. That is a highly iterative process. It is inventing. Then you document it. That's the easiest part of the whole thing. People who can invent process, who can sense what a buyer wants and change the language, change the pitch, like, those are really hard people to find. They also don't love when somebody gives them a bunch of process. And so, just to baseline here, I was at AppCues as the first employee through like about 10 million. I was at Lattice from 20 million to 100. I would say post 20 million, like maybe if 1 in 10 of your reps is an inventor, you're fine. Right? But early on, like, every rep has to be an inventor. And so I think that's a really important distinction, because you can't have a ton of inventors at 20 or else people want to go their own way. That's how they find job satisfaction. You need a balance of people that actually just want to like show up and do a job really well and try to get like 2% better, 2% better, 2% better every day. Whereas early on, you want an 80%er. You want somebody who figures something out 80%. It's like, cool, next thing, cool, let me go do something else. Think about it.
I remember at Pave, it was really hard for us because I oftentimes find that reps 5 through 10 are the hardest ones to nail, because we hired Build for the 4, and it was awesome. We would do a demo flow. We would practice a new story. Someone would be like, when I said this story about how this employee got outraged about their stock option grant, the HR person lit up, someone else tries it. They're like, that story works, put it in the bank. We literally constantly were trying new stories, new discovery questions, and we were building this bank that was building the Pave sales from scratch. But it's hard to hire builders for every single rep when you get to reps 5, 6, 7, and 8. And so what would happen is I would hire someone who seemed like they wanted to build, but if I really knew how to test for it, I would have realized that they didn't. And they would go into these calls and be like, I told the story that Morgan told me to tell and it didn't work. And I was like, okay, did you try a different story? He's like, no, I tried that on 3 calls and it didn't work each time. And I'm like, no shit. We're a 50 employee company. You got to try something new. So John, how do you test for that in the early stages?
In my first sales job out of college, I worked at this company called Eversave. Eversave sold daily deals. It's like a Groupon competitor, right? And there was 1 million Groupon competitors at the time. This is like, I don't know, 2011 or something. And so all these bagel shops and hair salons in like Lower Merion, like I had the main line in Philly as my territory, we're getting 1 million calls a day from Groupon, from like, I forget all these different ones, but there's like 100 of them, right? And all I had was like the first 4 seconds of a cold call to attempt to differentiate what kind of daily deal thing I was. And I would just keep plugging in different words for like, we're an X daily deal company, X daily deal company. And dude, then I landed on boutique and it just worked. It like opened the doors, right? And then like, this is a 30-person sales org. 2 months later, everyone's using the word boutique. And you just got to have people in there swapping language. I don't know how you find it. For me, at least, I get so bored doing something more than once that like the innovation on a sales call, trying it differently, is something I want to do because it keeps me entertained. And so I wonder, if you're looking for people that like don't like repetition. So it's almost like an inverse. Show me the person who like struggles with repetition. That's great early stage. Show me the person who struggles with repetition at 20 reps. Terrible fit. It's a repetitive job.
So to recap some of the things that I heard from you, when you were at Lattice, main things you were looking for was one, similar industry, or even did they come from a maybe a little bit worse competitor? Because that meant they would know the space and they would also be thrilled to be selling at Lattice because now they were selling the premium solution. The other thing that you talked about, and Armand, I've heard you talk about this a lot, is you are matching stages where if you're a 100-person company, maybe you want someone from like an 80 to 150-person company, not a 100,000-person company or a 2-person company. You generally want to try to match that. So I want to flash forward now to when you get into an interview. Let's assume you're interviewing, I don't know, an AE, John. Talk to me about what are you doing? You get on the Zoom, they enter the room. What happens next?
There's really only one question I have. And to me, it's all I need. I basically ask, I say, hey, tell me about why you're leaving your current job and why you're interested in this one. If they can't thread a story, it's over. Like, you should be able to put together a narrative because that's sales. I uncover pain, I tie it to a solution. It's the same exact thing. Can you tell me a tight story where I go, okay, yeah, makes sense. I think it could be a fit. Like, if you get through that point, I'm probably already selling you, right? I'm like switching gears right there. I might do a little deal stage, or deal size. I think that's relevant and important, sales cycle length. But I prefer the recruiter goes and gets that information before me because misfits there I tend not to play with. I want to hear you give me a tight ass narrative on why you're leaving your current job and why you want to come here. And I trust my intuition on evaluating that.
What would be an example bad answer?
Oh, well, company's not doing so well and I'm, not getting a lot of leads and the recruiter told me you have a lot of inbound leads and all of a sudden I'm like, because guess that's not a compelling story for me, right? Like a compelling story might be like, hey, I joined this company because of this really exciting vision. We were trying to do this thing. Ultimately, like the vision isn't working out. Product market fit's not there, which is common for like most early stage startups. And what excited me at the last business was they wanted to solve this really big problem in the space. You're also working on that. I'm still passionate about the problem, but I'm looking for somebody that has a little more momentum, who's like ready to like ship the winning product and like make things happen. I'm like, cool. All right.
Let's say somebody tells you that wonderfully made up story that you just gave us there, John, and it's good. You talked about now you're probably going to switch into selling mode. And I'm curious about how you sell the candidate on coming to work for you. Are you doing some more discovery about their situation so that your sale is stronger? How do you transition the conversation from there?
Yeah, I'm doing discovery. I got this from my buddy, Mike Peachy, who's at Day AI, which is a sales recording software. And basically, like, when you identify that you want somebody, you sell them aggressively until the finish line. Tell them all the great things about the company. Obviously, that starts with qualification and understanding what they care about and being authentic and not selling them on something that doesn't exist, right? Then, at the end, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to tell them why they shouldn't join. And I'm going to make them sell me on why they want to join. It's just like going negative in the sales process. It's super important to me to get somebody to join really clear-eyed and ready to go. I want them to know where all the bodies are buried joining the team. That's really important to me. That's important for me to feel in my own integrity and to be able to show up to work every day like clear-eyed. And I do it at the end, not at the beginning. And I find that it really works. And sometimes, honestly, it works great because somebody's like, oh, wow. Like, I was so excited and this thing makes me really nervous because actually, hey, I have this financial situation and there's risk here and I'm not comfortable with it. It's like, cool. So happy for you. Like, God bless, we figured this out now.
My other co-host, Mark Costaglo, does the exact same thing where he calls it the sell you out of it interview, where he's like, here are all the things that are wrong with outreach and all the reasons our team might cause some issues for you. I never actually asked Mark, what goes inside of that conversation? What are the types of things that you've told people in the past?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's tied to qualification, right? And it's tied to what somebody really cares about. At Growth Assistant, something I might say is like, I have one sales rep and I'm going to 2 sales reps. Like, the only thing I can promise you is that anything we're doing today is not going to exist in 6 months. It's going to be chaotic. I get 90% of my leads from Twitter, and who knows what Elon Musk is going to do? Like, he might shut down Twitter in a week and our lead source dries up. This is going to be chaotic. This is going to be hard. This is going to be different every day. I promise you challenges. You might say something like that.
Armand, when you were at Pave, did you ever have a narrative around, hey, this is how it's going to be hard, these are some things why you might not join?
If you want to hire outbound reps, you make it clear that even if the inbound will come, you are not going to be an inbound rep. And so I will oftentimes set the expectation that even if we get flooded with inbound, I'm going to run this team in a way that inbound will only get you to 70% of your quota. But I promise you, if you outbound will get you to President's Club really well for yourself. I just want you to know that that's not the type of team this is going to be, because we want to be the type of company and sales team that is able to pick their customers. And that is a muscle that you can lose. The other thing that I would test for is a lot of people thought that they wanted the early stage life, but I don't think they realized what it actually entailed. Is I would say, like, guess what? The person who's going to teach you how to run discovery is going to be Morgan Mello, my top rep. In 4 weeks, I'm going to hire another AE. You know who's going to be teaching that discovery training in a couple quarters? It's going to be you. If you're not willing to take time off quota and put together these trainings, that will not make you money directly. But if you just wanted to maximize the amount of money you were making in the early stages, we shouldn't be having this conversation. I should just go refer you to another awesome growth stage company where you can make all the money. And I'd be willing to do that because you made it and that's why I'm having this frank conversation with you. And what that happens is people like step into that shit a little bit more. Like, they lean into it when you push them away.
Let me add one thing that came up for me there. When you're at a growing company that's successful, you get a lot of internal referrals. You know what these reps are talking about with their buddies? They're like, yo, all inbound leads at 130% goal. And the only thing we know is that venture companies need to either triple or double every year. Guess what's really hard to do? Triple or double your leads. Outbound's coming. It comes for all of us every single time. And so, like, to pretend that there's this moment in time where somebody is going to join when you already have momentum and live in a pure inbound world and be happy, it's not going to happen.
Armand, you said something interesting, actually, and this was in the context of picking your customers. The line you said was you want to be able to pick your customers. That made me think about when you're hiring as a sales leader, wanting to pick your reps and not just have to pick from the internal referrals that come your way. And I actually want to go back to, John, something you said earlier, which is, okay, they have that really tight narrative in the beginning, and you're like, okay, this is somebody I want on my team. One of the things that I've learned, Armand, you taught me this, is like usually the best reps, like you'd have to sell them pretty hard, because if they're looking to leave somewhere, they've got a bunch of options in front of them, and you need to be able to win this deal and get them on your team. You talked about doing some discovery to better understand their situation so that selling them on coming to Lattice or Armand coming to Pave was the no-brainer choice. You've identified you want this rep. You've identified that they're good. They're looking to leave. What do you start to ask them?
I think when I joined sales, somebody gave me this old sales adage, which is like, you got 10 deals. 2 of them are going to close even if you're crap. 2 of them are never going to close no matter what, and your job is to win the 6th in the middle. I personally don't agree with that. I just want to find more of the deals that look like the 2 that are going to close no matter what. That's always been my philosophy. I want to spend time on the right deals. I feel the same way about hiring. If I love somebody's profile and there's a bunch of resistance as to why they're the right fit, I'm not going to spend my time there. Like, I'm looking for a seam that I see in their desires and goals that I authentically can grasp onto and push them on to see if we're a good fit to work together. And I think you hear it in that very simple question up front. Why are you leaving? What's next? If I'm like in the middle there, I'm probably just gonna have them walk me through their career choices. Tell me why you left each job and went to the next one. I think I can usually find it in there if I want to sell them, no matter how good they are. I don't want to sell somebody who I don't think it's the right fit for.
What do you do if you have a candidate that you've outbounded and they're like, I'll take a call. They're not taking an interview. They're not enrolling this interview process. If you just start ripping them with interview questions, they're going to be like, whoa, 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 I was just taking an introductory call. How do you run those types of situations?
I show up on the phone. I try to control the energy minute one. I want it to be a Zoom call, not a phone call. I'm going to lean in and I'm going to shift the energy of the room. And I'm just going to say, so why'd you take the call? And to me, that's it. It's that's it. If they're going to be stubborn with that question and be like, you emailed me. I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. I'm over it. Cool. Maybe I'm not fighting hard enough. I don't know, but that's my feeling.
There's some degree of momentum that is coming in your direction when someone agrees to jump on a call with you. And this is the exact same thing that we teach in discovery. If you outbound someone and they jump on a call, they don't take every single meeting with every single cold call they've ever received, which is why you always start the call by just asking, why the heck did you take the call? Instead of surveying the world for every possible problem you could surface for them, there has to be something that caught their eye other than the fact that we sent you 3,000 emails or made 7 cold calls. And that is almost always the case with candidates. And then it's on you as a hiring manager to be able to pull on that thread and press on it. The way that I'll oftentimes start an interview is I'll start with a brief 1-minute pitch, because if I've outbounded them, they probably have very little idea of what we actually do and the problem we're trying to solve, the sales team we're trying to build. And I'll tell them a little bit about the org we're trying to build, what we're all about, what the stage is, what it's not. And then I'll ask why you took the call. And then from there, it's just more and more questions trying to understand the type of career that they'd like to build for themselves. If you get the right bits of information out of that person, that allows you to sell the person on whether or not we're the right company to offer you that goal or fit those needs for your career.
Selling software is one thing. Selling a person on what to do with 2,000 hours next year, that's a responsibility. You cannot take that lightly as a hiring manager and a leader. Pulling somebody in to do something that they might actually have had some misgivings about if they knew the whole story, I think that's kind of dark.
What's your philosophy to negotiating comp?
Well, my philosophy, if I'm the manager, is to build a system that results in zero negotiation. I build career pathing. I do not do ranges. There's junior commercial, there's senior commercial. There are definitions for what those things in, and you fit in a range. Your quotas are the same, and you're in the same place. 12 A's. I am moving to no negotiation immediately. That's my philosophy. I don't want to negotiate. I don't want my managers to negotiate. I don't want reps talking oh, you make more than me. It's nah, that's a terrible feeling. I don't want anybody in the org to have that.
And so how do you respond? Because a good rep should try to negotiate their offer. So what's your response when they start pushing for more money, higher OTE, other things?
I would always say, look, I know in sales you want to negotiate. I'm the exact same way. We are first and best offer. And the reason for that is if you are an excellent rep, which I think you are, you're going to make it up by beating the heck out of your quota. But there's no reason that I should make a bet that that's going to happen before numbers are actually on the board and do a disservice to all my reps who are doing that. I broke that rule one time. So there was one rep where I gave that rep a higher compensation and everyone found out. And my top reps were really upset about it. And the moment that person was not performing, there was 10 times more pressure on them because everyone knew that they got paid more and I had to let them go. And after I made that mistake, I decided that I would never budge on that ever again. Well, on a brighter note, John, this was an amazing interview. We have to move to the final question. So what is one bad habit that every sales leader should break to make every team out there a little bit better?
Stop spending your time on PowerPoint deck formatting. It's a waste of time.
Let's go. We're going to make your episode art in Times New Roman. Everyone hang on for a 60-second recap coming up soon. Cheers. Alrighty, Nick, it is time for a 2x2 recap. What do you have for your 2?
So my first one is the first question that you should be asking a rep when you're interviewing them is, tell me about why you're leaving XYZ company and what made you interested in coming here. What you're looking for is, can they actually tell a story? Can they weave a coherent and compelling narrative? Because that's what sales is. The other one, number 2, is when you realize you want this person You should transition to selling hard. Sell them hard on coming to your company, but then save some time at the end of the interview to anti-sell them and tell them why they shouldn't come work for you. One, it will help your conscience. Two, the best reps know that things aren't going to be perfect. And when you show them behind the curtain, it actually gives them more certainty about why they would want to take the offer in the first place.
Number 3, if you're not sure about making the hire, don't make the hire. Second guessing yourself every step of the way, and every single time it caused John heartburn, and it's definitely caused me heartburn. And then lastly, number 4, when you get to the point where you're giving the offer, don't negotiate on comp. We're all in sales. We have performance-based compensation. If people want to make more money, they'll prove it on the leaderboard. Alrighty, Nick, how can people help us out here?
So sometimes when I listen to an episode like this, I'm like, man, I really want to go deeper on things. And Armand, I know a couple weeks ago, you wrote a newsletter on your step-by-step process for interviewing sales reps. Folks, if you want that, it's free. There's a link in the show notes. Go grab it. Thank you for listening. I don't know what you're doing with your arms, but we'll see you next week on the show.
Subscribe to YouTube to see. Bye.